does American capitalism have its limits? Now, look, before I lose any more subscribers for even asking that question, please hear me out. This is to help. This is to help our nation, okay, and the world at large, right? And I'm a diehard capitalist, okay? See this T-shirt right here? You can get this T-shirt for free, actually, if you donate $25. Yes. If you donate $25 to the link down below with PayPal Homegrown, you get a homegrown shirt, a unique one. There's other shirts that I have with Teespring. You can check those out too, because that's the beauty of capitalism. Okay, and I am a diehard capitalist. But I would love to get into some of the limits that as I get older, I start to see these things. And I think one of the clearest is Jeff Bezos. Now, Jeff Bezos seems like, oh, he is just broken through, like, how do you call it? The stratosphere of what capitalism can be. But I think he limits it for the fucking rest of us. He really does. And yet I'm all for people becoming as wealthy as they can. But when you start stepping on other fucking people, there's a big difference. And those are the limits that I'd like to talk about. And by the way, just a couple of other shirts. Shameless promotions. There's many other shirts. Look at this. Don't tread on weed. All right? You get that one. You get this one. If you donate $25, free T-shirt, free shipping, tax inclusive. Okay, or you can go to Teespring for the other ones. Okay, enough of the shameless self-promotion. Now, to help me out with this, I have Torsten from Welshmer's Stories, who's got a great channel, and he's got great videos on economics, and that's one of the reasons why I definitely wanted to have him on this, and especially because he has the German perspective. And even though a lot of people say Germany is a democratic socialist country, it's a capitalist nation. But they have certain things in place that keep people from going fucking broke, especially over healthcare. Another limit to American capitalism. And by the way, I highly recommend this book, On American Sickness. This is not America bashing, by the way, not at all. This is America helping, okay? By the way, Torsten, please introduce yourself.
Good evening, Nachi. Yes, that's very important for me. When we talk about America, and I, as a German, criticize it, and we are facing the same problems here in Germany, or many of the same problems. So I don't want to bash America. So let's get this straight from the beginning. So
no, and neither do I. But it's funny. I was talking with some childhood friends last night, and we're all very much, at one point or another, we've all had some business of our own and stuff, but we're starting to feel the effects here in Miami of mysterious wealth. And one of my friends actually brought up something that I'd like to do maybe a separate video on one of these days. And he said, not all wealth is created equal. And I was like, that sounds very wise, very profound.
Absolutely,
and he went into it like, he was like, how the Eskimos have so many words for snow because they're constantly surrounded by snow. It's amazing that here in the United States, we're constantly surrounded by other people's wealth, but we don't really have different names for the different type of wealth. And we know some of them. I mean, for people who want to get into it, there's earned wealth, there's inherited wealth, but there's also ill-begotten wealth. Okay, and that one I kind of made up myself. But yes, there are people who come into wealth through very dubious means. And that therein lies one of the biggest limits of capitalism here in the United States, because we allow this. We allow a lot of this foreign money from Russia, from China, now from Venezuela. I mean, we're getting all these Venezuelans, the wealthy Venezuelans, and they're coming in different waves. There was the first wave of Venezuelans that came in once Chavez was kind of taking power, and they were starting to see, oh shit, they saw the writing on the wall and they left. But then there was a second wave of wealthy Venezuelans, which you could read about these. I think they were called the Boligarchs. There was a great article in the New Times. No, not the New Times. Yes, the New Times here in Miami. It's called New Times. And Boligarchs, like oligarchs, but with the Bolivars. And these were the Chavistas, the people who shamelessly just made and raked in so much money. Yet we have the FBI and the CIA after some of those people, but there's a lot of other people that have managed to come here, especially in Florida, man, where they've bought up $1 million fucking condos. They've helped. Well, it's not like they've helped, like they're trying to help in any way, shape, or form, but they've really pushed up the cost of living down here, and it's really fucking it up for the rest of us. And by the way, here's another limit to American capitalism. Not everybody wants to be fucking rich in this country. There's a lot of people who just they just want to have a life. They just want to have a job, hold a job, and live have a decent home and stuff. Not everybody has the ambition of Jeff Bezos to fucking take over the planet. But anyway, I feel like I'm talking too much now. Any thoughts that you want to throw in there, or any limits that you see in comparison to Germany? You guys do things differently. So, for example, you guys don't have anybody going broke over healthcare over there, right?
Well, in Germany, our system is pretty much the same like in the United States. The Nachi, you are kicked out of this. Oh, there you're back. You are kicked out.
Oh,
right.
I kicked myself.
All right. Now, Germany works pretty much the same way the United States work. We have some social things embedded in our system, for example, healthcare. So that is one thing, that our healthcare is kind of government regulated. I mean, we have these different insurance companies and stuff, but yeah, we added a certain socialist idea to it. But our economy works pretty much the same way like the American economy, and we are a strict capitalist country. So there's no doubt. We are not socialists or anything. Yeah. I mean, of course, we have a welfare system. So if you get unemployed, then you get welfare. And yeah, we have this retirement insurance, that you get a retirement plan automatically when you retire. So we have these things in place. But other than that, we have free market, and everybody can be as rich as he likes. But I think you made a very important point, because when you said not everybody wants to be fucking rich. You know, I mean, we want to have a decent living, but we don't necessarily all want to be Jeff Bezos.
Exactly. And I don't think everybody even has it in them to be Jeff Bezos, even the wannabe Jeff Bezos. Number one, you have to have, like, there was a good book that I saw called, I think it's called How to Change the World. And I could look it up right now, but I don't want to get too distracted. I think it's on Amazon.com, of course. And in there, they highlight 4 people. One of them is Jeff Bezos. The other one's Mark Zuckerberg. The other one was Richard Branson. And I think the 4th one was Elon Musk. And as soon as I saw the fact that the book is about these 4 guys, I was like, you are setting the bar so fucking high for the rest of humanity. Because here's the thing. I know my limits as a human being. I'm not a fucking genius, and much less a mathematical, scientific genius like these guys are. These guys are truly brilliant minds. So that's number one.
Are they really? I mean, when you look at the histories of these guys, I mean, for example, let's take Elon Musk. I mean, his business idea was to print money. I mean, that is simple as that. And everybody came up with this idea like 500 years ago already. Yeah, his PayPal company. That was a money printing company and nothing else. So if you start printing dollars in your basement, then that is illegal. When you do it on the internet, then it's perfectly fine. And that is what he did.
I think, okay, I don't know. I guess I can't argue enough on PayPal, like the intricacies of PayPal, but I don't think it's a matter of just printing money. I think this guy has provided a really, and I use PayPal. I mean, part of the donations for this is through PayPal, and it works pretty well.
Yes,
I think it's a pretty genius service that.
But PayPal still, I mean, PayPal is a bank, and it is nothing else than a bank. It only works on debit, not on credit. Yeah, you have to pay into your account, and then you have your money there, and then after a while you can spend it. All right, but that is essentially a bank, and what all banks do is creating money out of nothing. and PayPal is no exception.
Okay, look, to not get too sidetracked, it's funny how I can feel that there's something wrong with what you're saying, but I can't put it into words, and I don't want to get too sidetracked on what exactly how PayPal works. But
PayPal is not so extreme like another bank, like Morgan Chase or something. They are more extreme. PayPal is not that extreme. That's why they sold it for pennies. But yeah, like a few billion or something, which is almost nothing for a bank. But yeah, it is based on the same principle.
But here's the thing, like I said, I don't want to get too sidetracked. But look, just off the top of my
I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. But like that's where to say that PayPal just prints money, I don't think that's true, because I don't think they put out loans. They don't do loans, and I don't think you earn interest with PayPal. It's just a service. It's like a third-party service that almost works like a mini or a micro escrow account. It seems to me, and it's a good. But anyway, look, let's not get too sidetracked. In my opinion, though, it's not even an opinion. I think it's just an observation. I think it's pretty safe to say Elon Musk is a fucking genius. The things that guy does with his time, the things that he's doing, and granted, it's funny, like Tesla's not making, if I'm not mistaken, it's not really making any money. But this guy, bottom line is, not everybody's like Elon Musk. And this guy, I think by the age of 12, he had already started a business with video games. Like, that's just not the average human being. They just don't.
Definitely, yeah. He has definitely the mindset it needs to become rich, to become famous. There's no doubt, and he's definitely a smart guy. So yes,
and then of course there's the ingredient of luck as well,
Absolutely.
and the fact all four of these people, they grew up in pretty well-to-do families, and if I'm not mistaken, I forgot now I'm getting a little confused if they also included Bill Gates. But again, another person who's just at a level that not everyone's going to get at. No one's. And then that's one of the things that bothers me about a little bit the way that I was taught about what is capitalism and what is the American dream in this country. Like, there's so many fucking things they leave out. There's so many things they do not tell you about. And one of them, I mean, I was taught, you make money with other people's money, and that one I think I remember. Don't ever try to start a business just with your own money, which already that starts getting a little shady. You know what I mean? It's almost like, hey, let somebody else take the fucking loss, and you get to run with the money. And I'm like, and that's one of the things that I've also noticed. It's really difficult to become a billionaire in this country without stepping on some fucking toes and without having some really sharp elbows where you're just fucking clank, clank, clank. And I think countries like Germany, I thought that they've kind of corrected for that a little bit, through the regulations. But you go ahead, you tell me.
Yeah, we have more company regulations, so that is absolutely true. I mean, in America, when you run a company of a certain size, then you can do pretty much whatever you want. And in Germany, that is only true for the really big companies. Yeah, like BMW, they can also do what they want, or Mercedes-Benz, or Bayer Pharmaceuticals, or you name it. These giant players, they can do what they want. But when you are a medium-sized company, then you can't. And in America, you can do what you want. So that is probably a difference. And yeah, therefore we have different incomes. But yeah.
And that's where I think, like right now, our president, our commander-in-chief, Donald Trump, the things that guy tried to get away with. I mean, especially the Trump University. And again, there's so many shades of gray for this, because I remember reading one of those books on negotiation. I was like, wow, this book is really well written. I think it was written by one of his lawyers, but it had some really sound advice. I mean, I was like, I was going to buy it, but I remember it had the little logo Trump University. I was like, is that like a joke or something? Is this? And at first I thought it was just, when I saw Trump University, I was like, oh, that's kind of a clever branding, like, yeah, I learned from Trump, But little did I know that they were literally putting out fucking degrees and like convincing people, just like the other rich dad, poor dad. And I think that those are some of the limits that I'm trying to talk about and things that I would like to expose. By the way, look, just to read a couple of comments. And this one, sorry, to pat myself on the back here. How do you call it? Somebody said here, Ernest said, Nachi's a centrist in my opinion, but he's always great to listen to. Thank you. And then somebody, Victor replied, yes, he is. I watch occasionally to avoid the echo chamber. I like that. I do not want to be a fucking echo chamber, dude. That's the one thing. And be an echo chamber, I want to like talk about things that are true and real.
And I think it's a compliment that they call you a centrist or not a liberal. For me, a liberal is like a swear word, and a centrist, that is something positive.
And yet so many people find and I've seen it, maybe I should start collecting some of those little examples. There are people out there that try to make centrists out to be you're wishy-washy, you have no backbone. It's like, why are you forcing people to pick a side? And the thing is that I'm socially liberal, fiscally conservative, and I'm glad to see that those terms are like floating around and enough people say them and stuff like that. Because I think that's the thing. I mean, there's a time and place to be conservative, and there's a time and place to be liberal. And I think it's, you want to be liberal with, in other words, you want to be open. By being liberal, you want to be open to new ideas when the old ideas are not working. But yet there's a lot of old ideas that we do need to conserve, such as the rule of law, especially when it comes to murder, rape, and child molestation, and theft, and extortion, and fraud, and many of these other limits of capitalism. But some of them, that's the thing, like, we seem to lose them, and then you start to get this drastic inequality. And I think for anybody who's honest and, I guess the best word would be honest. If you're really honest with yourself about some of the problems that we have in this country, dude, it's not for nothing why you have so many people clamoring about inequality, and then that's the problem. Then you get that pendulum push where then the fucking Bernie Sanderses come out and they think they've got the fucking answer, And if we want to avoid the Bernie Sanderses and all the other, and the, I don't know, Antifa, yeah, let's throw in Antifa there, because I know they've got some pretty communist ideologies. I don't want to keep shitting on Black Lives Matter all the time in my videos, but they clearly have fucking just like these radically collectivist ideas. And by the way, it's not only about collectivism, it's about making people fucking pay. It's about revenge and vengeance and stuff like that. But those forces come out when you start to ignore that, when you start to ignore that inequality. And my fear is watching the United States somehow, some way ending up like fucking Brazil, where the inequality is so stark that if someone's rich because they're living behind a walled compound, and if you're not there, the middle class is very almost, I don't know how non-existent, but I've been in Brazil and I remember there's not a lot of gray areas between the rich and the violent poor, and that's what I'd like to avoid. And I'm starting to see that here, and I'm starting to see it in Miami. I mean, we're starting to get fucking carjackings. We're starting to, and Miami's always been known for its crime, and Hispanics were guilty of it. When Cubans came over, there was the crime wave, the Cuban crime wave that came over with the Marielitos in the 1980s. But somehow they corrected it. It got corrected, and but now I'm starting to see, like in Chicago and stuff, it's not correcting itself, and I wonder to what degree these are happening because of these limits that I'm trying to talk about. But
yeah, I mean, look at the history. Like for me, I always like to start with after World War II, so in the 50s, and see what happened since the 50s to now. How the rich got richer, and the middle class got poorer and poorer, and the middle class almost disappeared already. So, and in the 50s, there was a really wide middle class.
Oh yeah,
you're reading the comments. I can see it. You're reading the comments.
Yeah, no, and I'm trying to. That's the tricky thing about these streams. Like you're trying to get that balance between the person you're talking to, but you obviously have the comments coming in as well, and I'm trying to get those. No, and I don't know. I wish I could speak to why there was more of a balanced throughout the 50s and stuff. I guess it was just a completely different economy. Like back then, it was really, you had a lot of factory jobs that a lot of men could count on. There was a lot of people who were like, yeah, I'm going fucking working at the factory like my father did for 20, 30, 40 years, and I'm guaranteed a paycheck. That just doesn't exist anymore, you know? And I think you can't even really blame it entirely on the unions either, because I think eventually technology was just going to start taking over, you know? But so, hey, Captain Coalpile is here. Do you want to start just letting people in and fuck it and see? Torsten, you still there?
A second, just wanted to
okay,
reply to the chat. Sorry, so no, I'm back.
No, that's cool, dude. Hey, everybody, thanks. Thanks that you take the time to listen to strange ideas. Good. Do you want to let some of them in? I mean, we got Captain Coalpile. I was actually curious to see if Ernest from Canada could talk about the Canadian regulation of the banks over there, because I remember talking. I forgot who I heard who told me this, but Canada supposedly doesn't have such drastic recessions and depressions as the United States does, because their banks are more regulated. Though I always wondered if it's just a smaller population and more homogenous. They don't have as many varying different types of people and thus varying different levels of ambitions and stuff like that. But should I let people in? You up for that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's your channel, and sure, why not?
Okay, no, yeah, because yeah, fuck it. Let me let a couple people in just to see what are these limits that we're talking about. Let me put this here.
Strange thing is, even though I lived in Canada, I have no clue about banking regulations over there. So yeah, but it might be true. I mean, yeah.
Okay, so it's out there for anyone that wants to jump in. And yeah, and I'm just seeing that, and it's a little worrying, because look, one of the other things is I'm starting to find, man, I don't even know if I could afford to live in my own fucking hometown anymore.
Yeah, I mean, the problem, in my opinion, is that I mean, you can see it at the stock markets. These are numbers from a few years ago. I don't know the numbers from today, but a few years ago, the money that was traded on the stock market was 2.5 times the value of the whole planet. Yeah, 2.5 times the value of the whole planet. So we should ask ourselves, where's this money coming from? And today we know that the stock markets are pretty much a giant bubble and nothing else. And the rich people know it too. And they have to invest their money in something real. And this is what we are all seeing. Yeah, that these huge amounts of money coming into the real world, and they are affecting all the prices and everything. All the prices are rising. And yeah, but we don't earn more money. So when we get a wage raise of like 5% or 3%, then we should be happy. But at the same time, everything, yeah, we have an inflation of like, I don't know, 1 or 2% more. So we lose money every year.
And that's where, really quick, before I bring on Ernest, because I wanted to talk about the regulation of the banks, if you know about that, Ernest. What I was going to say is and I've been guilty of this myself. When I mentioned that it looks like it's getting to a point where I just almost can't afford to live here anymore, I could already hear people saying, well, you just got to fucking work harder, bro. And it's like, it's not that easy either. And so that's when most people would probably think, oh, now you're fucking going soft. Now you're going commie. And it's like, no, dude, and those are the things, like, and I'm not saying that I shouldn't work harder, because I say the same thing when it comes to the single mothers and when it comes to the absentee fathers, and just take some fucking self-responsibility. But they're doing some pretty obvious mistakes when you are working hard, when you are holding down a job, when you have invested in the American dream and you put your money where your mouth is by buying a piece of property. And now you're finding yourself the property taxes are fucking up to here and shit like that. That's what makes it difficult. And then when you have these loosey-goosey rules where someone like Donald Trump could just make up fucking a business like, oh, Trump University, yeah, right, it's a credit, be rich like me. Man, you're not going to, but whatever. And you have these people who are able to fucking just, deceive people. That's where you start to get that inequality.
I mean, you have a special system in Florida where your taxes, your property taxes, are based on the value of the property, right?
Yeah. Now,
when your property increases in value, then you have to pay more property tax, right?
Yeah, and I guess I must be really ignorant because I just thought that was the way it worked everywhere else. Why? How does it work?
No, absolutely not. And in my opinion, that is a scam. So let's talk about one theory of Karl Marx, because that is basically how Das Kapital starts. And when he talks about values, then he differentiates between two different values. That is the trade value and the use value. Right? The trade value is when you sell your house. The use value is the value that you have shelter of your house. So the use value of your house stays exactly the same. If your house is worth like 100,000 or 5 million, the use value, it's the same for your one house where you're living. So why should there be a change in taxes? Because you are not trading it.
Why? No, if you're asking the question, I think I can answer it. I could see, and I have no problem paying if I have a pretty, let's say a 3-bedroom house and it's pretty big and it's taking up that much more space and there's a few more services and stuff. I could see myself paying that much more in taxes as opposed to, like, let's say an extremely wealthy person who's got, paying a little more in taxes than someone who's got a much smaller house and yet not paying the same in taxes that somebody who's got a fucking $5 million mansion, which are pretty common down here. And that's where it does. And I know people are going to probably say, oh, you sound like a commie, but no, dude, I think that's where, I hate to have to say this. I think I kind of do agree with a slight progressive tax scheme. I think you kind of have to have that too.
I mean,
Nachi, don't.
Sorry, Ernest, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Jump in.
I was just going to say, Nachi, that I'm glad you brought up housing and communism, because I have been in a running battle with communists the entire week on Twitter because I have nothing else to do. And the discussion we actually had today, I was trying to bring up, was that they were telling me that private property must be seized, and that's a tenet of communism. I'm sure we can all agree with that. The seizure of private property for the use of the state, aka the worker. And they were trying to tell me that a house did not count as private property; it counted as personal property, and therefore, when the revolution suddenly comes, it will not be seized. And then I said, well, what about, say, for example, Jeff Bezos' house? Oh, well, he's got too many houses. We're going to take those. I said, but that's his personal property. Oh, no, he's got too many houses. I said, well, okay. I said, what do you do then? Well, you only need the house if it's just for you, for your own survival, where you can live in this and that. I said, well, what happens if you're renting parts of the house? I said, you have to give up the parts of the house to the tenants when the revolution comes. And he's like, yes, of course, everyone should share it. But I said, isn't that your private personal property? So I thought you could keep your personal property. And now I know that when the revolution comes, I'm probably first on the wall.
No, I mean, I completely disagree with the confiscation of property. And by the way, MC here is bringing up some pretty good points in the comments. He's saying yes and no, Torsten. The value also includes undervalued, and money. If the taxes are too high, you elected the wrong people. And then he goes on to say use value does not stay the same for a variety of reasons. One simple one is storage capacity. Another is how many homes do you own? I don't think a tent has the same value as a woodshed or log cabin or mansion. Yeah, that I agree with.
No, I totally agree. No, I'm talking about one specific house. Like your house has a value. Let's imagine it has a value of $300,000, something like that. Like average American house. I think it's somewhere in that region. And
so it's around 200,000, by the way.
It's 200. Okay, right. No, I'm talking about this house. Yeah, of course. Like when you have a huge villa, double or triple the size, that has a higher use value, and a tent has a lower use value. But when the speculation bubble generates a higher trade value for your personal house, then the use value is not rising at the same time. That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about your house.
And I would agree with you on that, because that is a problem. When the bubble was coming here in Miami, and now again, they just use that as an excuse. Like, hey, the values are going up. It's like, hey, fuckhead, my income isn't. And by the way, this value of my house is going to probably fucking go down again. That's what pisses me off about a lot of these fucking people. Yet I do agree that the taxes that you pay on a fucking 1-bedroom townhouse should not be the same as the taxes that you would pay on a fucking $5 million McMansion, you know?
Absolutely. There's no question about it.
Yeah, I agree.
Right.
Okay, cool. We're all on agreement with that. Yeah. So, and those are the tricky things that I think, it's funny how much confusion comes in until, people actually sit down, they really define what they're talking about. And we have so much more in common, which is one of the other things I'm trying to prove with my videos. And these two extremes, the left and the right. Even though I saw some of those Twitters that you sent me, Ernest, those people, I mean, I don't know, man. I think either they're extremely young and horrendously misguided, or something's wrong with them. Especially as adults, you're still fucking believing that shit. Something's, I don't know. It almost true. It becomes like a religion.
I used to be a Trotskyist, man. So I know when I was younger, I believed in Trotsky. And then when I finally went to Western Canada to work, when I lived in Alberta, I realized that, hey, I like to keep my own money. I want to be able to save up and buy my own house. I don't want to have to, work hard most of my life, and then next thing you know, the state comes along and just takes everything and says, well, it's for the good of the people. Have a nice day. I didn't want that. I understand there's a need to be compassionate to an extent, but I mean, my accumulated wealth is not for distribution. It's something that I've earned. So that's what turned me off of it. But I have a question for you, actually. How do you feel about flat tax?
I haven't done enough. I'm assuming you're asking me and Torsten, or?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, so for me, I haven't done enough research on it. I mean, at first glance, you're like, oh yeah, everybody should just pay 10%. But 10% for someone like Jeff Bezos is not the same as 10% for someone like me, even though 10% I think is a pretty good number. I think 10%, maybe 15%, but yeah, once you start going past 20%. But again, wealthy people like that, when you're at that level of wealth, it's not just a salary that's getting them there. There's capital gains. There's so much shit. And so when I see someone like Forbes, if I'm not mistaken, Steve Forbes was really trying to champion that. And yeah, when I was younger, I thought, oh yeah, man, for sure. That way we're all fucking equal. But it's not. That's one of those little tricks that extremely wealthy people try to fucking push into as policy.
But now, can you?
If I'm wrong, I mean, I don't know.
No, yes, you're right. And of course, I mean, there's always ways around these things. It's like with the current U.S. tax code, and same with the Canadian tax code. People find a way to take their money and hide it or use it in different ways, charitable donations, offshore accounts, et cetera, you know, or investing in certain kinds of property, using, you know, deducting expenses, things like that. Anything they can do to get away, to avoid that money. I mean, so they're going to do it no matter what. It's just a matter of trying to wring it out of them. I mean, everyone has to pay their taxes. I mean, I don't disagree with that. Now, if there's loopholes in the system, okay, you can close the loopholes. But, you know, either way, there's always going to be somehow that they're going to sneak away through it. I mean, the Panama Papers have shown this, the Paradise Papers. I mean, people are just good at hiding stuff. And be it secrets or cash. I mean, you know, it's just the way it is. So, I mean, there is no perfect way to tax people. The only way to do that is to, if we are to listen to the communists, just seize everything. So that way, then you don't have to worry about them hiding the money, because you just have it all anyway.
Now, that's where I would probably disagree on there's no perfect way to tax people. That's something that I've often wondered. I'm like, there probably is a way, like after all this trial and error that we've gone through in human civilization, like there's a lot of things we've discovered. Okay, human slavery, not good. Okay, so I want to scratch fucking human slavery off. Hey, what's up, MC? Let me just get this really quick. That one didn't work. Feudalism, not good either. Not a, you know, very, very limited economic system. Monarchies, which we're not going to get into that one, but monarchies, especially going back to the Egyptian pharaohs, where they were not just monarchs, they were gods. That doesn't work either. What we have discovered is, property rights, entrepreneurship, competitive free market. Yeah, that works. It's called capitalism. Go ahead and start a business if you want. If you don't want, that's okay. You could be an employee. That's fine. Not everybody has to be that fucking ambitious. But there should be a tax system that I think, granted, it wouldn't be a one size fits all, like the flat tax. No, that would be this way too simplistic. And you'd have a lot of extremely wealthy people, in my opinion, not helping out. That's where it gets tricky, though. You know,
the thing is, when you have a flat tax system, that is extremely unfair. And when you look at the tax income of the state, they are already generating the most tax from sales taxes. That is the biggest part in the tax system, and that is
Definitely
equal for everyone. And the problem that we have is that a relatively poor person, they have to spend, they spend in percentage, they are spending more than the rich one. A poor person have to spend all his money to make a living, just for rent, for food, and so on. While the richer you are, the more money you save, and you spend your money then for things like stocks, for like property, whatever, and they are taxed on purpose way lower than everything else. So why do we pay less taxes on a stock than for milk? I don't get it.
I can tell you right now why you spend less money on a stock.
Because it wouldn't make sense to trade stocks anymore if we would.
It has nothing to do with that. Because what is a stock essentially?
A stock is a product, nothing else.
No, it's business investment. Okay, it's direct investment into the business community.
Yeah, I can claim the same when I buy a liter of milk. I'm investing in the
because that's consumed and there's nothing left. I mean, that's a total consumption of things. There's a difference between when you're building a business, which is why there's what they call in the United States a thing like a capital gains tax. All right, why it's different than an income tax. And the main reason is because this is a risk the person is taking. What happens when you purchase a stock or so forth and the stock goes down? The value of the stock goes down, or you don't get a dividend. All right, does the government come back and say, okay, well, you took the risk, so we're going to give you extra money for it? No, they don't.
They don't do it when you buy a BMW.
You're only focusing on the winners. You're only saying, well, you won, so therefore I'm going to come after you. Therefore, it's unfair. But
No,
these
I'm
people are
not.
also
No,
aren't
I'm
just the
not.
winners;
No,
they're
I'm
also
not.
the losers.
I'm not focusing on the winners. I say stocks should be taxed, and they should be taxed equally, because you
No,
can
but
buy.
see, then what you're doing is you're creating a situation where why invest then? Why take the risk? You're inhibiting investment into new businesses and new employees.
I don't think that people should invest in businesses, because that is a job of the banks. Or get rid of the banks. That we only have private investment. Yeah,
The, the
that's the
the
point.
banks are there for the banks are a method that people utilize to gain capital.
The
All
the
right, when they're
banks
starting businesses or they're doing some other types of risks as well.
the
All right,
banks
but
are not
stocks are
borrowing.
also
The banks are not borrowing any money anymore. They are not in the borrowing business anymore. They are in the stock trading business these days, and that
well.
is part of the problem.
That is something that I tend to agree with you to a large extent, not completely, but to a large extent, I tend to agree that there should be a major limitation on banks' investment in putting money in stocks and things like that. That should have been limited a long time ago and left alone. It should be closer to what we do for what they call credit unions in the United States, all right, where those kind of transactions are quite limited. I would agree with you there. But the idea of
You can easily buy a company, and every company has a value. So, for example, Bayer Pharmaceuticals just bought Monsanto, yeah, or Facebook bought Instagram. So you can put a price tag on a company. So, and I don't see where there's a difference between buying, like, yeah, a milk. You are probably right, because you
right,
consume
but
it.
when you
But
talk
when you
about
compare,
buying a company, you're talking about purchasing a percentage share of stocks nowadays when it turns into a corporation. The reason you had corporations were two reasons. The first reason is so that people could spread the risks of actual investment to multiple people, so that you had multiple owners in a company, but really only one director. Then, due to the litigious nature of the United States, all right, people started to use it as a
and see,
method to
I
avoid.
understand the idea behind it, but I also see that it went completely off the rails. I mean, the whole stock market thing got completely out of control,
Well,
and now we are at a point that the average taxpayers pay for these guys gambling. That is the situation we have now. So
I don't think
there
you
is
have
nothing
taxpayers.
beneficial of it anymore.
You only have taxpayers paying for this kind of gambling, all right, when you have a government willing to bail people out because they become quote unquote too big to fail.
And I think that may have played a role in why Canada wasn't so affected when everything hit the fan. Our government was rather tight on how the banks could operate. So they didn't have, I believe in the United States, and correct me if I'm wrong, they had the toxic mortgages, things like that. Like they were giving mortgages to people who obviously couldn't afford to have a mortgage.
Right.
And in Canada, that did not happen. As a mortgage broker, it is intensive. It's you've got to go through a lot to get a mortgage, and they're not just going to hand them out. So by being very secure and very paranoid of how the banks operated, we weathered through the crisis as best we could, better than most countries did. So, in fact, I'm really against letting the banks just go willy nilly all they want. And because if they do fail, I feel, at least, now maybe I might be wrong, I'm not incredibly knowledgeable on the banks, but if the bank fails, generally the people whose money is stored in the bank, that money disappears. It's used to pay off outstanding debts and things like that, or I may be wrong.
Well, you're usually insured. At least the FDIC, I think, now insures up to $200,000.
Oh, okay. Well, I believe it's the same thing here. I believe they are up to a certain amount. But I mean, still, if you have more than that, I mean, it's wiped out, and that can be a big impact. So
Isn't it already very strange that if a bank fails, you lose all your money you have in your bank account, but if you are on debts, you don't lose the debts? Isn't that already a strange system?
Well, it depends on who you owe the money to. I mean,
Yeah, the very
Well, at
same.
any point in time, somebody could declare bankruptcy and wipe that loss right off of themselves immediately within the United States as well.
Unless somebody else subsumes the debt, I believe that that's possible. That, I mean, say if another company buys up that individual's, like, if he owes, there's certain people owe that individual the money, and another group or person buys up that responsibility and assumes the responsibility of collecting, then, I mean, the debt carries on. But I can see what Torsten means. It's
Yeah, but what happened in the United States when that redressing took place? A number of people who were the investors in those businesses and in those banks, right? They lost because they said, we're going to repay you pennies on the dollar. They went through bankruptcy court and everything else. To say that there isn't a redress across the board, that this isn't a risk, whenever you invest in a bank, whenever you invest in any company or any business, all right, you're assuming some sort of risk.
Oh, definitely.
Okay. And so
Right.
when that risk doesn't pay off for whatever reason, whether it's malfeasance, whether it's just the economic downturn or whatever it is, then you're going to be the one holding the short end of the stick. You're going to take the loss. These things.
But the point is that nobody is investing in companies anymore. They are
investing in
no,
companies.
they are not. They are speculating with it. They are betting on it. That is not an investment. That is a completely different thing.
There are people speculating, that's true. But then again, you have people speculating every single day when they go out there and purchase a lottery ticket.
Yes, it's exactly the same. That is exactly the same. And our whole
and what's worse is that lottery ticket, if it ever does pay off, you're not even you're going to get maybe half of that because you still got to pay the quote unquote taxes on it.
MC,
not in Canada.
There is nothing wrong with a lottery ticket, but a lottery is our whole economic system shouldn't be a lottery. That is the problem.
Our whole economic system. I think you're overstating just how much of our economic
not at
system.
all. Not at all.
That's kind of a. Because look, now I've started playing the lottery. Now that I'm fucking unemployed,
same here.
But there's a massive difference between taking a fucking chance, and especially with $2 you know, and that is clearly chance. You can make some educated, I wouldn't even say guesses. You can make some educated bets with the market. I mean, that's at least my 401k hasn't tanked, and those are the good things of capitalism in this country, that we have companies like Schwab and Fidelity, that they've come up with algorithms that really help cushion you, you know, with index funds and stuff like that. Now,
if I may say one quick thing in terms of, you know, the speculating and gambling out on the market, the one thing I think that should never be invested into a market is pension funds. I mean, if I was with any company and they said, well, listen, we might invest your pension money into, you know, certain stocks, I can pull out of it. I'm pulling out, because I don't like the idea of, you know, placing bets on the market, and to an extent, the stock market, you know, it is speculation and gambling. You're hoping that what you invest in, you know, increases in value and generates a return. So I don't like the idea of having, you know, my retirement betted on, you know, and say if we invest in, I don't know, what was that company, Enron, you know, say if somebody thought, hey, it's a good idea to invest the pension fund in Enron, and then it tanked the way it did. I mean, I'm screwed. I mean, that's why I'm. Yeah, sorry.
The retirement plan is a very special situation, but I think you are right. Yes, but in my opinion,
but look who that was doing that kind of stuff. Most pensions in the United States, to be honest, are not done from a company. They're done from the government, whatever government agency is funding that pension.
It's a bit different here, though. Like, I mean, well, mostly, at least in. I've promised Nachi many times I'm not going to say anything about my homeland, But
No,
at
you go
least
ahead, that's why I watched
at least in Newfoundland, I'm just going to say it as an example. At least in Newfoundland, the pension funds are not, chucked into the market. Now in Ontario, the pension, like the Ontario Teachers Pension Fund owns a weird amount of property and they have a lot of stocks and shares. And for me, as someone whose father is on a government pension from working for the provincial government, I don't like that, because I'm glad that his pension is nice and safe, and it's at a set agreed amount, and you don't have to worry about one day somebody saying, "Look, we invested in this, it's gone. Sorry."
Okay, but where are you going to store? Okay, if you have something like a pension fund, all right, the whole purpose of a pension fund is a quote unquote retirement plan, right?
Yes.
So at any point in time, if you're just going to do an ins and outas, right? You need to have more money coming into the pension fund than you have going out. Correct?
That is correct. You don't have to worry about that
Okay.
here, man. Trust me.
Oh, okay. So here becomes the issue. All right. If the company's growing, that's fine. What happens when that company actually stops growing or actually ends up shrinking a bit? Okay. Then all of a sudden, especially when longevity hits place, because one of the things that was always counted on with pensions is the same thing that was counted on with Social Security, was that for the most part, the amount of money that people were putting into the plans would never come out of the plans, because the people were going to die before they would ever realize equality, right? This is assuming that you're not doing anything with the money, right?
Yep, I agree.
Now, so you end up in a situation where if a company goes under, all right, and it was managing the pension plan, guess what? That pension plan is no longer valuable. Now, let's go to the second aspect of that. If you have this money and you're putting it into a quote-unquote pension plan, all right, this is money, if you're not investing it anywhere, if you're not putting it anywhere, right, this is money sitting around out of the economy. It's not doing anything. What's the difference between that and stuffing it under your mattress? At which point you have to ask, well, then what the hell is the point of the pension plan to begin with?
And to an extent, I'm going to agree with you, because I know for a fact that his pension fund, if the cost of living goes up, the pension is not adjusted to this, because it's already been in a set agreement from when he did. I don't know how it exactly worked, but when management and the unions and all that made the agreements, and actually any chance my father had to make it to the cost to equate to the rise in living is nullified, because he became management. And once he did that, the unions really don't give two shits about you, because you're no longer paying dues. But that's not the point. It's and it is, honestly, it is stagnant right now. It is, but it is still a decent enough pension that he can live a rather comfortable life, but I can see what you mean, MC. I really do.
The problem with the pension is that you shouldn't have a private pension company at all in the first place, because you have inflation every year, and if you can't get interest rates on your money, then how do you compensate this inflation rate? You can't. The only person or entity that can do it is the government, because they are in control, theoretically in control of the money, and they can print as much as they want. They influence the inflation rate. So therefore, it can never be a private company. At the same time, when this private company fails, who has to kick in and give these person a pension? It is the welfare of the state. So therefore, there cannot be a private corporate pension fund. That is ridiculous.
And I can agree with that too. And I've seen it happen, actually, where the state has to pick up the slack. It happened in Labrador, an iron ore company.
It happens everywhere. It happens in our sorry.
But
They don't run pension plan. I'm sorry, Nachi, go ahead.
No, no. A good point to also bring up is that sometimes the state itself can't fucking fund it. It cannot pay out the pensions. And right now, off the top of my head, I forgot where that was happening, but that was after the 2008 financial crisis. There were quite a few cities where employees were just government employees that had worked there for like their life were just told, sorry, we can't pay you anything.
Well, they. Oh, sorry.
I forgot which ones it was, but there was a.
I think San Mateo in California was one. There were a number of. You're correct. There's a number of municipalities that all of a sudden the pensions that they had been promising their people, all right, their quote unquote employees, all of a sudden there was no way they could pay those pensions, and they had to be bailed out.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if that would qualify as one of the limits of American capitalism, but there is definitely a limit to the promises you can make, and I wish more people understood that too.
I don't know. You haven't heard the how good it is to be a civil servant here. We just made an agreement with the large union here, Newfoundland Association of Public Employees, for their plan for like their benefits and that. And what we agreed on was that there will be no employee is going to be laid off. Anyone who is a member of NAPE cannot be laid off by the provincial government. Also, we will be paying anyone who retires or quits gets severance. Anyone who's worked a year or more gets severance. So what that means is that every year that you work, you get a week's pay. So which is not a bad deal if you've worked there for 30 years. That's a nice little send-off. And also, it's going to cost this province $250 million to implement this whole plan that they've come up with. And Nachi, I've repeated this over and over and over. You know my place's financial situation. We're broke. So I don't know where we're going to get another $250 million, but this is set in stone, and we have no choice. The only way we're going to get rid of these people is through a system called attrition. So that means, they just retire or quit. So either way, if they retire or quit, we're still paying for them. So it's one of those challenges, I believe, that I really don't know how to handle. And it's also, it also shows the weakness of government sometimes, especially elected government, in the face of trade unions.
But I mean, the system in Canada, as far as I know, is pretty much messed up because every province has its own tax laws. So there is no governmental tax law. Every province is doing it the way they want.
To an extent, there is federal tax, and then there's the provincial tax. Everyone has to pay in Newfoundland 15% on their sales tax. That's
right.
It.
Yeah.
And then you also
I'm talking income taxes and business taxes.
Yes, they are all varied, and then so once you pay the province, you have to pay the feds. So it's not uniform. It's confusing. It's difficult, and it causes a lot of issues. At the end of the day,
Here I was thinking that you guys had it pretty together by not having such wild economic swings, because of the regulation of the banks.
The liberals are in charge.
But that leads to other phenomenons. For example, Canada had not seen this housing bubble, but at the same time, because it was a pretty steady system. You had you have the prices for housing rising and rising. For example, Vancouver. Yeah, exactly. You can't afford anything in Vancouver anymore because everybody is investing in Vancouver. Not only Canadians, but also from abroad. Especially Chinese people are investing heavily into Vancouver, and that is ridiculous. For a shitty house within the Vancouver area, you pay like 400,000 Canadian dollars. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's not even including the rent. Now, certain areas, you have to count on the wages, cost of living, things like that. That has to be considered too. You've lived in Canada, you said, Thorsten.
I was living there in Vancouver, and for a parking spot, You pay
Oh, don't.
400 bucks a month, 400 for a parking spot. That's
Have you ever heard of
ridiculous.
Fort McMurray?
Fort McMurray, no.
It's the Texas of Canada,
All right.
and a one-bedroom apartment there, I paid $1,600 a month, and that was with I had to go with the municipal housing corporation. Like, they own the houses, and they gave them to people who made low income. I made $25 an hour, and I was considered low income. I mean, which, in Canada, that's not a bad wage if you live in
No, it's not
Newfoundland.
about a wage up here either.
Yeah, so I mean, I was making 25 an hour, and I was considered low income. That's scary. I mean, my electricity bill was $200 a month. My cable bill was ridiculous. I was paying an extra, $400 a month. So I mean, I was paying $2,000 a month just for a one-bedroom apartment, and that was on rent control.
I was moving from London to Vancouver, and London is considered to be one of the most expensive cities in the world. So I thought Vancouver might be cheaper. No, it was more expensive. It was more expensive than London. It was ridiculous. I paid $1,400 for my one-bedroom apartment.
That.
By the way, really quick. Sorry, I'm gonna cut it. I'm gonna start cutting it here now, because now we're getting into, which is fine. It's fine. I brought you in for the Canadian politics, but if I'm gonna wrap it up with anything, I want to wrap it up with American capitalism, and I want to get it from MC's perspective. MC, would you agree that there are some limits to American capitalism?
There's limits to capitalism in general, so I would have to say yes. But
anything you would think worth talking about?
Okay. One of the things that you have to be very wary of, right, is when the government is involved in business, right? Regardless of whether that government is a federal government, whether it's a state government, or whether it's a local government, right? Now, that's not to say that the local municipalities and the state municipalities, all right, are not interested in, business licenses, and they don't have a stake in this kind of activity, all right? However, if they themselves are doing things to access a business or create a business or fund a business, for example, here in Tucson, there's a big thing going on where they're trying to loan out land specifically to this company that's going to put up space balloons, right? And they're basically giving them a section of land that's worth $15 million. So you got, and this is land owned by the city and the county, all right, to this company, all right, basically as a loan that they say is going to get paid back once they get the space balloon project up off the ground.
It never gets paid back. It never will.
And this is on top of a situation where they said, okay, we're going to get involved with the local businesses for the convention center and hotels, and we're going to create what they call the Rio Nuevo, the Reinvestment Act to create the investment area in Tucson. Right? They've been doing this now for over 30 years. We've seen nothing. We've seen no new hotels. We've seen no new expansion. However, they are renting for $1, all right, out to the university, okay, space, all right, for a quote unquote art gallery, right? When you get governments doing this, when you get this kind of thing to worry about, this is the danger. The other danger, and this is more of a federal level than anything else, but it also applies to state, is if the state are doing things to prevent competition or that inhibits competition to the point where you end up with monopolies. One of the problems that we had back in the 60s.
Healthcare here in Florida, it comes down to basically two companies.
And it's getting, unfortunately, that's happening across the nation. All right, and it's getting worse. But back in the 60s, you had, for example, one long distance company. You only had AT&T, right? And that was because the government basically got in bed and said, this is how we want things to go with you. And the company's like, okay, well, I mean, I'm a monopoly. I'll help out the government if it's gonna give me free reign. Okay, sure. If I'm the only game in town, what the heck? So those are the things.
It's the same thing here.
Yeah.
So, sorry.
When you talk about capitalism and what are the limits of capitalism? Okay, it's not saying that regulation isn't important. But when you're trying to regulate, what are you trying to regulate? Are you trying to regulate abuses to like the environment? Okay, that's well within the purview, obviously, of a government, whether it's local, state, or federal, right? Or are you trying to redress some social wrong that you perceive? Okay, well, I don't like this company because it makes tobacco. All right,
now MC,
tobacco is a legal product.
MC, can I just quickly ask you one question?
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel that regulation should be used to prevent the rise of corporatism?
When you say corporatism, what are you referring to?
I just mean like this kind of cartel behavior between a lot of these corporations. That's more or less what I mean.
Okay, you're talking about like colluded type of practices where
yes,
where groups of small groups can sit up there and collude to sit up there and create that kind of stuff. Then the answer is yes, but that's not a regulation so much as I think of as a law enforcement activity. All right, so you're not really regulating so much as investigating and punishing things. So that, for example, one of the things that they did back in about I guess about 10, 15 years ago, you had a run on silver in the United States because several people tried to collude to basically corner the silver market. All right, I'm trying to think of who was involved in it. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but it was one of the major players. And of course, not only did they fail, they failed spectacularly, but what also happened is once it became known that they were involved in that, the federal government came in, the SEC came in, and put the hammer down on them. This is why, to be honest, when you look at things like insider trading, there's a reason insider trading is illegal. All right, the reason is because companies will dump stock that they know is bad. All right, before the regular public knows, in an effort to basically steal money from the public. It's no different than what the robber barons were doing back in the late 1800s and the early 1900s.
Yeah, and that's why we had the financial crisis. Yeah, those are some of the limits that a lot of times, granted, and it's good that these are illegal, So, but it's amazing how many people, if they can get away with it, if they can excessively deregulate.
Right. There's a difference between, I think one of the things that's happened with our country specifically is we've allowed corporations to have too little accountability from a personal standpoint. We're not holding some of the people within the corporations personally accountable for some of the decisions that they make when they do these kinds of illegal activity. All right. And we overemphasize, and this has happened because we overemphasize the personal responsibilities of small companies or small ownership, right? That force people to say, well, if I get sued, if my business gets sued, I could lose my house, I could lose everything just because of a nuisance lawsuit or some lawsuit. Well, I don't want to do that. So that's one of the reasons why people incorporate, because it limits their liability. They can't come back and take your house. They can't come back and take some of your other property. It insulates your that's how, to be honest, that's how Trump got away with going bankrupt in certain areas while he was making money hand over fist in other areas, because the liability of that corporation only existed within that small corporate environment, of which he could declare, okay, well, that's bankrupt. Meanwhile, he's busy, having tons of cash in other areas. Now, if they could have ever proved that there was any kind of money transfers away from one business to another, all right, that's illegal, and they could have hammered Trump, but apparently they haven't been able to prove that, or nobody's been able to come out with.
But when you change your company's legal status so that the government, or say the society, is responsible for your company, then shouldn't be your income also be restricted I mean, that
No,
is my idea.
hold
I
on.
mean,
Society is not responsible for those companies.
yes, they are. In the end, it's always society who has to bail out.
No,
That
no.
is the end of the story.
The thing is, see, Torsten, you say that they have to. No, they don't.
Yeah, no,
Right?
it's,
All the time. Trust me, governments all the time when they really don't want to pay something.
When they declare bankruptcy, who has to pay the price? It is always
The
small
other people
workers.
who have loaned them money. In many cases, for example, when Lehman Brothers went down, right, there were a number of investors, all right, that got paid money, pennies on the dollars. When this recent quote unquote bailout that you saw of GM in the United States, right, every single one of the stock investors ended up taking pennies on the dollar for their stock. They saw a massive devaluation of their stock. And they had no redress because this is what the bankruptcy court decides. The bankruptcy court will take all the debts when somebody declares that they're going to be bankrupt, right? First of all, the court has the ability to decide whether or not they're going to accept you going bankrupt or not. Okay. And if they decide, yes, we're going to let you go file for bankruptcy, that we're going to accept this as a bankruptcy case, then the court gets to decide, okay, who are all your creditors? Who do you owe money to? All right. And at that point, they assign at that point who gets money and by how much. So let's say you owe $50 to Joe, $100 to Mary, and $75 to somebody else. Now the guy could say that all three take the same percentage and only get paid 50 cents on the dollar. In which case, one guy will get $25 back instead of the 50 that he's owed. The other person will get $50 back instead of the $100 that he's owed, etc. All right. But they also can say, well, this guy, he's going to get all of his money back, all right, due to the way the contracts are let. And Mary, she's getting maybe $20 back. All right. So the bankruptcy courts have a lot of leeway and a lot of power. Now, why is this important? This can become very important, all right, in things like credit cards, all right, because one of the things that's happened in the U.S. court systems is when people file for bankruptcies, generally the courts will say any credit card debt is immediately written off completely. All right. So this makes, one of the reasons why credit card companies get away with jacking up their interest rates so high is simply because in a bankruptcy situation, they know the courts will not recognize that debt or not even pay them anything back. They'll be getting literally maybe a penny on a dollar, all right, if they get paid at all. Because generally, when a person goes bankrupt in the United States, it's all credit card debt generally is just immediately erased, all right, and the bank that gave them that credit card, they're out all that money.
That's another limit. I would say that's another limit to American capitalism, that some people can get away with that shit. But
well,
hey, dude,
people do. I mean, and that's the sad part about it is there's always people. If everyone's trying to do the right thing, and the vast majority of people are, okay, I honestly believe the vast majority of people try to do the right thing, but it doesn't take a very significant minority intending to do the wrong thing to stress the process, to stress the system to the breaking point.
No, and that's why you get dictatorships. And dude, with that, I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to cut it here, and I'm gonna end this on a very capitalistic activity. I am going to shamelessly promote my T-shirts that are for sale. Well, they're for free for a $25 donation, and it's the Joker. It is smoking, and it is all of these right here. And the way it works is if you make a donation to paypal.me/homegrown, you just tell me which one of these shirts you would like, which coat of arms, flying eagle, king of spades, whichever one, and you tell me the size. These are limited edition. If I don't have it, I refund you the money. But if I do have it, I let you know, you tell me the address, and I send it out to you for free with a $25 donation. Shipping included. And with that, thank you guys, man, for joining, and thanks for for all the information you guys provide. I mean, I was kind of winging this one, to be honest. This was a last minute. We had something completely different planned, and it just didn't work out the way it was supposed to. So thank you so much, Torsten. Thanks again, Ernest. Hey, I wanted you to come in with the Canadian perspective on the banks, and you came in like a champ with that one, man. And MC, as always, dude, fucking blowing my mind away with the information that you have that I couldn't have even thought of when I came up with the idea for the stream. So thank you all for being here, bro.
No,
Thank you for having
time,
having
man.
us.
All right, man. And with that, this concludes the Nachi Free live stream for Wednesday night. Thanks again for watching. Thanks.